Oppenheimer is one of Christopher Nolan's most staggering achievements. It's a thudding, thrilling, tremendously intimate story about a scientist who sometimes can't see his own greatness, who often can't see past it, and who tragically can't persuade people to believe him when he does. In the film, a bomb explodes, the death toll is in the thousands, and there's even a chance the planet might catch on fire. But the screenplay traces destruction at a smaller, more subatomic level. It focuses on the systematic ruin of a single man. For all its shots of sprawling landscapes, this is a movie that largely plays out in a series of rooms. Some are rooms in which scientists achieve greatness. The other is a single, lonely room in which a scientist falls from grace. Like the fission reaction that triggered the atomic bomb's explosion, the screenplay also ripples with a cascading chain of consequences. The film plays out in three major parallel tracks. The first follows J. Robert Oppenheimer, played by Cillian Murphy, as he goes from stifled student to superlative scientist and director of the Los Alamos lab during World War II. The second is set in the future and sees Oppenheimer having to answer questions about his past ties to communists. The third timeline is filmed in black and white. It follows Louis Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr., during his hearing to become the US Secretary of Commerce. The film flits between an event, a retelling of the event, and the aftermath years into the future. We get the bomb and the fallout at the same time. The first half of the film plays out like a series of rapid, choppy vignettes, each scene driving home a certain point about Oppenheimer's character or his circumstances. It's effective, but it's also a little hard to keep up with. This compressing of time and information also has its casualties. If you've read American Prometheus, the book on which the film is based, you'd know that Oppenheimer's wife Kitty, here played by Emily Blunt, was never really able to bond with their son throughout his life. If you just watch the movie, especially a scene in which she ignores her child's cries and drinks in the kitchen alone, you would just see a harried mother overwhelmed by the demands of domesticity. If the first half of the film is propulsive and urgent, the second half is deeply sad. The film builds up to the Trinity test, the bomb trial before it's dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It does this with superb tension, but the result is oddly anticlimactic. It's less evocative than the worlds of light and fire that Oppenheimer envisions when he shuts his eyes. But maybe that's the point. Nolan isn't interested in using the full scope of his technical prowess to bring fire and fury to the screen. He doesn't want the audience to gaze in wonder at the sight before them. He doesn't want to present it as any sort of heroic spectacle or scientific achievement at all. The film's most compelling stretches are those set in small rooms. Conversations that determine who lives and who dies play out with such casualness that it only reinforces their cruelty.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world?
Chances are near zero.
Near zero.
What do you want for theory alone?
Zero would be nice.
After the bomb test, we see the impact it has on Oppenheimer. The movie externalizes much of his torment. Is that clanging sound coming from the inside of Oppenheimer's head? Is the thudding that we hear the sound of his heart? A speech that he gives later unfolds like a horror movie, his joyous words at odds with his inner rumblings. However, for a filmmaker so fond of playing with perception, there are limits to what Nolan lets the audience see. The actual Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings are never depicted. Instead, the camera focuses on Oppenheimer's face as he is faced with the aftermath. The film evokes pity for him and his guilt over the bombings, instead of pity for the bombings themselves. Cillian Murphy plays the haunted paradox of a man who has made his choice and must now live with the consequences. The film spends just as much time in the ridges of his face as it does on the plains of Los Alamos. How could a scientist absorbed in splitting things down to their minutest elements be so blind to everything else? It's a maddening mystery, and the screenplay does a fine job of pointing out the blinkers around Oppenheimer's piercing blue eyes. Still, it induces pity for the scientist whose loyalty to the country is questioned and whose reputation is shredded down to its last atom. So much of Nolan's filmography is about time lost, moments left unseized, and opportunities that have slipped by. But not in Oppenheimer. In presenting events and then flashing forwards, the director reveals truths that weren't apparent at the time. He reaches into the future and grabs justice for his protagonist. He makes things right. Then, in one of his finest climactic sequences yet, he underlines how all it took was for one man to get it horribly, horribly wrong. For more reviews like these, subscribe to Reviews and More.